parola al console generale di Spagna a Roma, Senen, Florensa e Palau. Grazie, prego.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Excuse me for speaking in English. I've been in Rome only for a couple of, well, not a bit more than a couple of months, and I would not like to mistreat the Italian language. So in the next future, I'll be able to do it, but by now, let me speak in English. And I have to start by saying, obviously, that it is with emotion that I knew just this morning about the fate of Eugenia Ferragina. She has been a wonderful woman, a wonderful person, a wonderful colleague, with whom we have been working for many years now. I didn't know that she was so ill, and just the day before yesterday, when I was just taking some notes to prepare what I would like to say today, and I took a look at what she had been publishing with us at the European Institute of the Mediterranean in Barcelona, and I found that she had been publishing an incredible number of articles in our yearbook and our papers, publications, etc. I remember one of the last occasions we met, it was with Hassan Abuyoub here in Rome. So it is really an incredible piece of news, which is, I thought it would be an extraordinary happy occasion. It is a sad occasion, but the best thing we can do is to keep her memory and keep working for the same ideas and the same goals. Okay, saying that, I must start by saying that I'm extremely happy and honored to be with you this morning in this wonderful Roman morning after so many rain in the last few weeks. On behalf of the European Institute of the Mediterranean, and the occasion of the presentation of this Rapporto sulle economie del Mediterraneo. And it is so for different reasons. In the first place, because as it was said by Ambassador Hassan Abuyoub, at the IMED, we have been working for the last, I think it's 28 years now, following Euro-Mediterranean developments, and so we could appreciate the quality of the work that was presented every year with the new edition in the more than last 10 years of the Rapporto sulle economie del Mediterraneo, whose latest editions were edited by Eugenia Ferragina. Then, of course, I feel honored to be in such a prestigious panel with friends from a long date and with the presence of President Romano Prodi. And you will see why do I mention him especially at this point. I remember when he came to Tunisia. I was at that time a Spanish ambassador to Tunisia, and he came in, I think it was in 2003, to present what was then to be the new European neighborhood policy. And I think that he really got to put on track what has been up to now the most important building block of what could be the construction of this common Euro-Mediterranean area. The problem, as I will explain briefly, is that we are stuck almost at the same point he left this endeavor, and when we badly need to go ahead with that project. Then, of course, I was to say that I am extremely glad to be with you because this is a new publication of my friend Eugenia Ferragina, and with some other people contributing to it, Professor Ali Boni, my dearest friend who is here with us. Well, both of them have been, for example, an extremely important link for us to connect the Italian specialists in Euro-Mediterranean affairs with the other institutions, as is, for example, the European Institute for the Mediterranean or the other institutions that Ambassador W was just mentioning. And finally, it is certainly an important occasion because we are at a crucial moment. It is obvious for the stability and the development of the Mediterranean partner countries, the South and East Mediterranean and countries. After the Arab Springs, and I would say then came the summers, the autumns, and even the winters, we have a Mediterranean more differentiated than ever. We have one single country that still remains in the same way after, let's call it a revolution, and into advancing in a democratic transition in Tunisia. Then we have some other countries who have been following this reformist way, keeping going ahead through reforms, which is the case of Morocco and Jordania, for example. We have these other cases of, I would call it, Thermidorian reaction, as is the situation now in Egypt. We have the worst cases where the state has collapsed with wars and destruction, as first in Libya and then, unfortunately, with this disastrous war in Syria. But going back, well, this was just to underline once more the seriousness of the situation in which we are. As to go back to the content of the Rapporto, special focus, as has been said, has been placed on the labor markets, its demographic, social and economic conditions, and with special attention to the women and to youth, and to migrations and the environmental constraints or possibilities. And certainly, from a demographic point of view, there has been big changes, important changes. It was interesting to see in the figures that were presented by Professor Capasso. I would take, because I know, well, better some countries than others, the case of Morocco or Tunisia, for example, it was about the same. At the moment of independence, at the same moment, they were at the fertility rate of about, it was said, my figures are 6.7 children per woman in Tunisia, and it was about the same figure in Morocco. Today in Tunisia is 2.1, and in Morocco is a bit higher, but not that much. So 2.2, okay, Morocco. Behind these simple figures, there is an incredible change in the model of the families, in the role of women in society, in the engagement of women in professions and in the economy, and the educational levels of the general population, in the general modernization of the society. This very simple figure going from 6.7 children per woman to nowadays 2.1, 2.2. But it is kind of a recent phenomenon, and therefore the cohorts, the classes, let's say generations of young people, men and women who arrive in the marketplace, in the labor market, excuse me, are the ones who were born 15, 20 years back, not the ones who are born this year. So there is kind of a lag effect when we compare economic figures and demographic figures. And therefore, we have now still for about 15 years of plethora of young men and women arriving in the labor market, and we have to provide opportunities for them in the next future. How to create jobs, because we have this plethora of new people arriving. Of course, migration is one thing that can happen, and it happens. In Barcelona, for example, since we have my friend Abu here, we have about 300,000 Moroccan people living now around the region in Barcelona, who are contributing in a decisive way to the development of that area. But certainly we have to provide jobs for the people where they are in their own country. And this is certainly a complex mechanism, because it includes the demographic trends, it includes the economic growth and development rates, and it includes the political and policy prerequisites for that. And the problem is that we have two big mismatches for that, two big disadjustments. The first one, and I'll try to run because I know that the clock keeps running. The first mismatch is that one between demography and the economy. The point is that the economic rhythm of growth that prevails now in South and East Mediterranean countries does not correspond to the needs of the demographic trends. So we would need a higher rate of growth to create enough jobs for all people arriving in the labor market. And we are living in not the worst situation, at least in the West Mediterranean countries. In Morocco, in Algeria, even in Egypt, we have this year, last year, and the year previous, a reasonable rate of growth of about 4%. But although it looks good, it is insufficient to bring about employment, to absorb this plethora of young men and women, and to bring into the market a higher percentage, for example, of women. It is not just a question of the unemployment, because in the unemployment, we only count people who do not have a job and are looking for it. So the women who are not participating in the economic life do not count as unemployed. So one of the ways is to include more people, because then is how we increase the overall productivity of the economy. So this is the first mismatch. We conducted a few time ago a study, a prospective economy, which was MedPro, with some other friends and economists from around the Mediterranean countries. And there were a prospective study between 2015 and the horizon of 2030. And we had 4 different scenarios. And the only scenario to produce enough jobs to absorb unemployment and to reduce the distance between south and north of the Mediterranean was the best scenario, required a rate of growth of about 7%. This is no news. We have the experience of that, of countries who have really jumped from underdevelopment to development, or who have really changed it. Okay, a couple of minutes. Have been at around 6.5% to 7%. Of course, if you have a higher percentage of growth, as it is the case of China, more than 12% for many years, then it is a bigger change. But I think that a true revolution is to have an economic growth of more than 6.5% for more than 20 years. This is a real revolution. This is what changes completely a country. We had other scenarios. If there was no peace, or the conflicts were keeping going on, then we could even have negative rates of growth, of course. And if we have business as usual, which is what we do have, then we have in that study, it appeared business as usual at about between 3 and 4%. This is what we have, which is not bad, but it is bad for the stage, the level of development in these countries. It is not bad for a developed country, but if you want to make the takeoff, it's not that I want to give new life to the ancient theories of Rostow about the stages of economic growth, but certainly the question remains, what do we need for the takeoff? What do we need to bring people, well, these countries from 3 to 4% to 6-7% growth? And, well, in that study, it appeared very clear that the way, and with that I will conclude, is to continue what had been presented by President Romano Prodi as the neighborhood policy. He said everything but institutions, but the only thing that was done was the first step in that way, to build some cooperation, technical cooperation, and a limited free trade zone to industrial products. We have to advance to an integrated economy, north and south of the Mediterranean, to build, well, it is some kind of extension of the European economic area, which exists between countries in the European Union and countries outside the European Union in Europe, Switzerland, for example, or Norwegian. This is the kind of area that we need. That hypothesis included in our model in MedPro produced, you know how much? Just in the model was a very, very complex model econometrically, 7% growth if we bring about this kind of economic integration north and south of the Mediterranean. It doesn't need to become a member politically, institutionally of the European Union, because most countries, by the way, in South Mediterranean will not volunteer to do that, but they would volunteer to participate in what is by now the internal market in the European Union that would become the internal market of that Euro-Mediterranean economic area. And the second mismatch, and with that, certainly I finish, Madam. The second mismatch is between the economy and the political and policy measures. Because what we do have now is, as I was saying, business as usual, and with that, the choice we have is to stay at the dysfunctionalities that we have now, in the best of the cases with this 3 to 4%, in the best of the cases of growth, which is not enough even to observe the unemployment in these areas, or unfortunately, in the most other cases, zero growth or even below if conflicts persist and even worse. So and with that we come to the first article in the report by Aliboni. We need first to solve the political problems and especially peace, at least, to be able to build this common area in the Mediterranean. This is what I could say, and with that I try to pay my small tribute to Eugenia, who was to be with us today. Thank you very much.